Welcome to another edition of Triton Talk. I am Marianne Mitchell, Associate AD for Communications at UMSL, and I am pleased to be joined by Director of Golf Operations, Troy Halterman, also known as both the head men's and women's golf coach at UMSL. Troy, welcome. One may assume that you've had a lot of extra time these last few months to play some golf. Has that been the case or not?
Yeah, unfortunately, with all the downtime we've had, the one benefit is I've played a lot of golf. Unfortunately, we can't really recruit out away, and we're shut down with the team, so it really limits what I'm able to do. So I guess the one upside is my golf game has gotten a little bit better.
How much golf do you actually play these days? I know obviously during the season you're pretty busy coaching.
I could just tell you in the month of April and May, those 2 months, I played more golf than I played the previous 2 years combined. And I just know that because when I turned scores into my handicap, I was still counting scores from 2018 on my golf handicap. So I actually know how little I was actually playing. Some years I was lucky to get 4 or 5 scores turned in over the course of the year. So, yeah, I guess one benefit there.
So obviously golf is one of the many sports that had their seasons cut short this past spring. For a pair of programs like UMSL with both the men and women that are national contenders and consistently in the NCAA tournament, it had to be pretty devastating to not be able to finish out the year on both ends.
Yeah, it was tough. And I think, I will probably never forget the day that the NCAA decided to shut everything down. I believe it was a Thursday. And we'd come in, we were practicing indoors that day. I think it was a rainy day. And so we had the girls team in there practicing, and 1 minute we're working on practice stuff and talking and everything's good. And then the message comes from the NCAA. And of course I'm kind of upset. And then I turn around and see my one senior on the women's team who was having, arguably the best season in school history. And just to her to know that had been taken away, I mean, she's devastated and, in tears and upset. And then it kind of hits you how big of an impact it has on all the kids, especially those seniors in that moment. Because at that time, we didn't know whether there was going to be, they were going to get a year back. I think most of us assumed that would not happen. That's a big step for the NCAA to take. And so that was a tough afternoon. And then, got on the phone with the guys at that point and kind of let them know what we'd heard. And then, had a team meeting the very next day. But it's just been a very crazy couple of months now as we try to get through all this.
And then you have quite a few international student athletes on both programs. Talk a little bit about them, how they're doing, how you guys all stay in touch.
So we use Zoom, and we've had a few team meetings since everybody went home. A lot of the kids didn't go home right away. They kind of got everything together once we realized it was probably not going to be, at first we thought maybe this will be a week or two and then we'll be back at it in a couple weeks. And once the reality set in that, no, this is a much longer term issue. So probably by early April, the first week of April, most of the kids that lived out of town had gone home at that point. And then we had 1 or 2 kids from countries where maybe they were worse off than we were at that moment. And so a couple kids actually stayed closer to summertime just to kind of let things calm down in their country. And then they flew home at that point. And, we had one young lady who flew back to Thailand eventually, and she had to stay in a quarantine hotel for 2 weeks when she got home. So now we're trying to coordinate how we're going to get them back here in August. And right now it looks like travel will be okay for them. None of them are coming from any hotspot countries that are on any kind of restriction. So hopefully we'll have everybody back in mid-August and hopefully get an opportunity to restart what we didn't finish last year.
And one of those players that actually is going to be coming back, the senior you're talking about, is Emma Thorngren. And like you said, she had an amazing season last year, probably the best player in program history. Talk a little bit about her and her season last year and what it'll mean to have her back on the course this upcoming year.
Obviously, anytime you can add a player to your lineup that has a stroke average like she's typically had in her 3.5 years with us, it's a huge help. I mean, she was a first-team All-American in her partial season last year. I believe lowest stroke average in school history by several shots. She was pretty much going out every tournament she went out in. We knew we were going to get a top 10 out of her and a chance to win possibly individually. And she was basically putting up scores of 75 and under almost every time she played. So that's so huge to have that. We're going to continue to search for that in other players and try to develop that consistency across the board. But she's just so solid and so, and such a competitor that she just, by this being her fourth year, it was, she's just gotten so consistent and matured and just become a really excellent player. And I know she's gone home this summer. She's been working very hard back home from talking to her, and I expect she'll come back in hopefully good form. But you never know how to restart. Every year is different. Whether she'll be able to pick up at that same point, I don't know. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
For sure. And then as both the men's and the women's coach at UMSL, you're constantly balancing those two schedules, whether it be practice, travel, whatever may be going on. How do you make all of that work?
It's not easy at all times. Sometimes you can feel like you're having to choose between team A or team B, men or women, which way you're going to go. You just try to balance it and make sure they're both getting as much 50% of your time, and that one program isn't being neglected, but it's not easy. We practice at different facilities on a daily basis. So sometimes I'm splitting my time at each practice. And then when we schedule tournaments, I try to schedule them where they're not on the same dates. That way I can attend all the men's tournaments and all the women's tournaments, which is great. Other than it just means I'm on the road almost twice as much as my actual players are. But that's the way I think the athletes get the most benefit and what's best for the team. So that's what we've tried to do.
And now some of our fans may not know this, but your dad is actually one of your assistant coaches. So talk a little bit about that relationship and what it's been like to work with him these last few years.
Obviously, that's been a great experience. Those that don't know, my dad was a college basketball coach for a long time. So comes from a coaching background and everything, but has always been a passionate, avid golfer. Actually, he plays far more golf than I do the last 20 years probably. So he's been a great help, and he understands college athletics and the student-athlete mindset. And, so he's been a great help there. And between him and our graduate assistant, Mackenzie Torres, who was an All-American golfer herself, with the two of them, as we start to, split our forces up, so to say, and decide where we are going to have to go different places, it makes it a lot easier knowing that the kids are going to be watched over well. And then, as far as my dad working with me, it's great. Now took a long time, but I get to tell him what to do, and he kind of has to listen to what I say after all those years of dad telling me what to do. So no, it's been fun. We've enjoyed it.
And then do you and your dad play golf at all? Is he still?
We do. Probably not as much as he'd like. He asks me to get out a lot more and doesn't always understand when I tell him I've got a work thing to do or a family thing to do. But no, we probably play, at least maybe once every other week we get out and play some golf. And I've got two young boys myself that like to play golf. So we get together sometimes here where we live. There's a golf course in the community, and so we'll play a few holes here and there with everybody together. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. Well, obviously you got a few more weeks yet before we come back to campus. So hopefully you'll still have a few more weeks to work on your golf game, and we appreciate you joining us on Triton Talk this week.
No problem. Thanks for having me.